We're back in a moment to take on another issue this morning. Do stay with us.
Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Now on Wednesday, the President Muhammadu Buhari signed the Coronavirus Health Protection Regulation 2021. And it is a move targeted at strengthening Nigeria's efforts at combating the disease which has infected more than 100 million people globally. Oh, that is a whole lot of people who have been. But the good news is that many have managed to recover. And we are praying that more on our shores will continue to recover. Now, to look at this, the new protection regulation with us this morning, I'd like to welcome two doctors who are joining us virtually. Dr. Abi Abraham, public health physician, and Dr. Ganiyu Jamiu. Well, actually, they're both public health physicians. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for having us.
That sounded like a school class, a classroom, and the children greeting the teacher.
Oh my God.
Yes. Now, so let me begin with Dr. Abi. When this regulation, when the president came out with this regulation, what were your thoughts? Were you pleased? Were you elated? Was it overdue as far as you were concerned?
Well, I did think it was a very, very good thing to do at the time. Perhaps should have been done a little bit earlier. It does appear with most of our governments that there are lots of things they consider before they put in certain regulations. But we as health people and we as medical people know that these regulations, we are focused on the health of the nation. We don't have conflicting interests. And we do believe that this should have been done possibly a little bit earlier. But having said so, we're happy that he has put in these new regulations. And we are just hoping that they would be enforced somehow. There are lots of things he has said, which in a sense, we all know that we have to do. But the issue is not just putting, saying things. The issue really is about enforcing them, engaging the communities, engendering trust in the communities, and just ensuring that lots of these decrees and regulations are carried out. So this is our thought. This is my personal thought and thought of many physicians, and this is our burden, that what has been said will be carried out.
Okay. Dr. Jamiu, considering our antecedents as regards the COVID-19 protocols, how easily do you think that these provisions, contained in the regulation announced by the president, how easily do you think that they will be enforced? Seeing as we have problem using sanitizers, we have problem social distancing, we have problem wearing our masks. So do you think that wielding the big stick now will make us follow those protocols?
Well, thank you very much for the question. I don't think just establishing a regulation will make people to want to comply. One thing I want to say, before now, we've been implementing some states have, instituted some of these regulations. They were even, putting up penalties and so on. I can remember Kaduna State and other states. My worry is that some of those things, the content of that regulation, there's nothing new in that regulation. These are things we do on a daily basis, which are already in our protocols, on which many people are not complying. It's a good one, just like Dr. Abraham said. But my worry is also has to do with the issue of compliance. And I may be worried again, because looking at the enforcers of that regulation, the police, the civil defense, and so on, I'm just being a bit worried that at the end of the day, we'll not be recording some level of violence, maybe people being shot and so on. So I think there is a lot more need to be done. apart from ensuring that we create more enlightenment, educate people, let people know about this regulation, the people that will enforce it to need to be talked to, so that they will not go out of hand and started, taking laws into their hand in the name of trying to enforce the regulation. Thank you.
Well, Dr. Abraham, first of all, if we look at as Dr. Jami said, clearly these are some of the things that are already being done, largely non-pharmaceutical interventions, MPI, as you all call them. But from where you sit as a professional, what really is the inhibition? Why is it difficult for people to comply with these basics?
Many reasons. I think the first reason we need to be very, very cognizant and very aware of is the issue of human behavior. You cannot just come and change behavior just because you say so. There are things that you have to put in place, especially in our own environment where there is a massive distrust of the government. Now, think about this. To me, there are two ways of changing behavior. The first one is yielding the big stick, like some of the socialist countries do. Like a lot of the countries in Asia, they just yield, they wield the big stick and they just say, you have to do it or you go to jail, and they enforce it. And the second way is by managing and changing behavior in several ways. And I believe the main reason is that behavior needs to be changed, and there needs to be a conducive environment whereby that behavior can be changed. So, like for instance, you have to have an enabling environment. We know that there are more people who are poor in Nigeria than who have money. And so you tell people to space themselves 2 meters apart. Yet you have people who live in houses that are barely 2 meters square. And 10 people are living in that house. How do you space yourself? You ask people to go on a bus and you tell them to space themselves 1 meter apart. How does that happen when you have only few buses to carry, the teeming population to where they are going? And so you find a situation where behavior, it's difficult to change behavior. Lots of people have said, look, COVID is not their problem. Their problem is poverty. Their problem is lack of education, lack of schooling, and all that. And you really have to listen to the people. I mean, we work in the community and we see the problem. We see that sometimes people cannot eat. They can't even have breakfast. And you are telling that person to wear a mask. A mask is 150 naira or 200. Meanwhile, he doesn't even have 200 naira to buy bread to eat. And so, changing that person's behavior is going to take a lot. And so I believe the first thing is behavior is the big problem. And to change the behavior, there must be a conducive environment. There must be an enabling environment. It's just not enough to say, there's a decree, you must do this. There are many things that
Dr. Jamiu, earlier in the week, we had this conversation with Professor Tomori, who said that persuasive communication has been largely inadequate. Information is out there, awareness is out there, but persuasive communication enough for the people to own the process has been largely inadequate. If you agree with him, where do we go from here?
Well, just like what Dr. Abraham said, people will not listen because their priority is different. And whether we like it or not, some people have recovered without even knowing that they have COVID-19. Some even had it, they knew they recover at home. They feel that
the reason for asking you, my apologies, the reason for asking you is now we know that is a problem. Okay, the people as she said, a very large population of unemployed people. Just in the course of the week, we saw on the front page of one of the newspapers that 90 million people are going into extreme poverty in this year. I mean, that is all of that is known, but that is the issue we have on our hands now. So, persuasive communication is supposed to help people to own the process. How do we go about it?
Well, as you said, maybe we need to repackage our communication strategy. Maybe trying to let them see reason why such need to be done. Let them know that by doing that, they are protecting themselves and they're also protecting every other person. We need to raise hope in our messages that COVID-19 is not going to remain forever, that it's just a matter of time, and that by so doing, we will not be recording more. Okay, let them people appreciate the fact that this thing is really real. To some people, it's not real. And for those that believe it's real, that are unaffected, we need to let them know that even when you are not affected, how about your neighbors, your family members, and so on. So what we need to do is to repackage our communication strategy to let them know that, please, let's raise people's hope. That please, let's do it just for a while. COVID will go so that we can remain, let them remain positive that it's not going to last forever and so on. And the more they comply, the more the likelihood of controlling it, that will ensure that we get back to a normal way of life. Because whether I like it, COVID has affected every other thing, especially economy. So let them see it in that angle, that if you're able to nip this pandemic in board, that our economy will bounce back and everybody can live a normal life, end their daily living and so on. So I think those are ways I think we can help in the issue of this persuasive communication you just mentioned. Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Jamiu, let me just stay with you a bit. One of the highlights of the regulation is hand washing and sanitizing. And since this thing broke last year, we have often said on this program that we don't see any concerted effort to ensure that more houses have water. So we're talking about places where there is no running water, where people have to buy water, and the government wants us to spend all that money buying water just to wash our hands under running water. And then there's also the issue of the masks. We've also spoken about governments giving out free masks to the lowly people. And we heard about the government of Cross River State opening a factory at some point last year. But we haven't heard much more about those masks. I mean, how much are they selling them for? Are they giving them out to the citizens for free? We don't know anything.
Yeah.
So can you help us out with all this?
Well, like for the Cross River, I won't be able to say much about that. But I remember that particular time where masks were being distributed. The one thing I want to say, based on my observation, is that in Lagos there is a kind of improvement in the rate at which people wear masks or have their own face mask. But the unfortunate thing is the attitude. I've had several encounters with some people. Why are you not wearing masks? I have it. They will bring it out from their pocket. I'll say, why? Please, this is tiring and so on. I can't breathe well and so on. So I think it's not that people are not aware of the use of masks. It's just the way, that is the attitude, the behavior. Some people don't wear it well. Some put it at the level of their shin. Some put it in their pocket. It's only when you remind some people that they wear their mask. So my advice, as you say, based on that persuasive, we keep on talking, reinforcement, messages. And another thing we need to know, it's not about wearing masks. Some may be wearing same masks for more than a week. These are issues, again, we need to know about that. Some will put it on a surface and just when you remind them, they will pick it up. So there are a lot more than just wearing masks, washing hands, and so on. And for the issue of water, I want to tell us that we all take our baths in our homes. So I don't think issue of washing that should be an issue. People should be able to get water to wash their hands. But my only challenge is that are they really washing complying with what the government is talking about? And again, on many occasions, I've said it on this platform, that you see why people don't comply is because they are not seeing corpses on the street. They don't believe in all some of this. They just believe it's just malaria and they will recover from it. So people should stop disturbing them. So I think, as I said, we need to repackage our communication strategy. Let people see that, okay, if you use this, you are saving our economy, we are saving our health system, we are saving our future and so on. So maybe by repackaging, it may more or less help out. And sorry to say, on the issue of social distancing, there are some banks, let me give you an example, that the size of that bank is not even up to 2 or 3 meters. So how do you
well, on that banking thing that you just talked about, Dr. Jamiu, there are a number of questions about that, especially the responsibilities placed on operators of some of these public facilities. But that's after this break. Just stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. One of the responsibilities, Dr. Jamiu, where we were placed on some catchments in the public from that regulation that the president signed is on the people who operate these facilities, banks, supermarkets, malls, open markets, and the rest of them. Okay, these are some of the highlights that you find there. We'll bring you the others, on the go. But the responsibility, just as you mentioned, is on the operators of the facilities, on the schools, of the markets, hospitals, and the rest of them, yes, supermarkets, to ensure compliance. From where you sit, and from your own professional judgment and understanding of what we have been dealing with, how far-reaching is this? We can talk about what can happen in the urban centers, but how about the suburban centers and the rural areas? How do you see this playing out?
Well, we call them establishment based on what the regulation said. Even in the urban center, I happen to be in some places like pharmacies and so where it is written on the doors, don't enter without face mask. But you still see people entering such establishment without face masks. So it's cut across. It's not only in rural or urban. It's an issue with people. And when you ask, I remember I was in a pharmaceutical store. When I asked them, I think why are you allowing people that were not wearing masks? They said, look, we need to sell our market. If you tell them not to come in now, they will not want to buy our product anymore. So please, we'll have to just manage it. So these are things happening in the urban center. When I look at the rural, is even more challenging. So my advice, just like what Dr. is, we've been saying it before now, not even before the regulation was finally established. We've been saying it that there is need for proper monitoring. How often are we monitoring what is happening? Let's even start with those establishments, the public utilities establishment. Let's even start monitoring. Are we really doing it? These are the major challenge. So we're having issue with the urban. So what do you think will happen in the rural? It will be even worse. So I think we need to, as we kind of roll out this regulation, there is need for us to put a kind of monitoring mechanism in place to actually enforce this, because it will look biased if you arrest somebody and in the same setting where other people are not complying. So there is need for standard, there is need for uniformity, so that when people are being penalized, they will actually accept the fact that yes, they commit such an offense. But in the situation whereby there is no uniformity in practice, and you decide to arrest one person and leave the other, it doesn't really make sense. And again, on that, if you look at that regulation very well, I mean, look at it, there was no age specific. It wasn't, they didn't even mention any age. So what happened? Are we talking about 4 years? Are we talking of 5 years? Are we talking of 6 years? Those are some of the things. There are some gaps in that regulation, but we are just looking at the positive. But there are some loopholes there in that regulation, but let's look at the positive angle to it. But no matter the level of regulation, if there is no appropriate monitoring, monitoring compliance, it will not lead us to anywhere. Thank you very much.
Dr. Abraham, one of the highlights of this regulation is that contravention is an offense.
You mean contravention of the
any of the protocols given?
Yes.
Contravention of it is an offense. And actually, it does state the penalty is either a fine or 6 months in jail. Your thoughts, your comments, please?
Yeah, I believe this is one way, like I said at the beginning, of ensuring success in whatever whatever you want to push through. But not everybody is going to be motivated by fear. So that's one thing. The motivation, jail. Well, yeah, big deal. It's not enough. It's perhaps for some people, but I know it's not enough for a country that is getting pretty disillusioned. And, like we've been saying, like Dr. Jamiu has also said, there are many ways, and Professor Tomori said, in terms of persuasive communication, ways of making people come on board, making people own the process. Working in the communities, every community, no matter how rural, has its rhythm. And so you can't tell a farmer in Gombe that he's going to be jailed. It doesn't mean anything to him. But if you get the communities to work together, what do I mean by that? In all communities, you have someone called a man of peace or a woman of peace. If you have engagement with the community, officials of the NDC and this NCDC and all the other stakeholders, you have proper engagement with the community and explain what you want them to do. I'm talking of community elders, the churches, the mosques, the places of worship. Nigeria is still by and large a very patriarchal environment. People will listen to their imam or their pastor before they listen to their president. That's just how it goes. And so if you get these people on board, they will also be able to own the process, not just owning the process, but monitor the process for you. So what do I mean by that? We work in communities whereby we give out, like you say, masks, palliatives and stuff like that. By the time we go to the people on ground, that is the man of peace, there's always a man of peace, there's always a chief or something like that. It could even be the area boys that we speak about, those people who used to be called miscreants, but I call them mighty men. Even those people have their chief. You go to the chiefs and say, this is what we want to achieve. Can you help us with this? And the chief says, yes, I'll get my boys. We'll all do it. So by the time you get them to own the process, you know what will happen? They will monitor the process for you. They will get their people on board and they would police themselves. We don't have enough policemen in this country to police the whole nation based on this decree. We don't. But if we get the people on the grassroots, it will get their trust. So I'm not just talking of the stakeholders, that is the NCDC. I'm also talking of the doctors, the primary healthcare people, people who have a focus on health. Go to the community and say, this is the problem we have. Can you help us? And get them all to own the process, and not just owning the process, you get them to monitor their people. It's a beautiful thing. You will find that a better incentive than to tell people they're going to go to jail. That doesn't mean anything. Some people even want to go to jail. Perhaps they will eat there.
Dr. Abraham, let's look at testing, for instance. Maybe our figures are still as low as they are because people are not coming forward to get tested. And really, they may not be coming forward to get tested because they have to pay for their test. And if you recall the protestation at the airport, was it yesterday or 2 days ago? The returnees from Saudi Arabia who were protesting because they didn't want to be tested. Of course, we don't know if they were asked to pay for those tests or not, but they just didn't want to be tested. Why would anyone refuse to be tested? Is it not good to know your status, whether you have a virus or not?
Thank you. There are many reasons. I think one of it, like you rightly pointed out, is affordability. Lots of people just don't have that amount. Now, in the past, I'll give you an example of what used to happen in the past. In the past, even people who are asymptomatic, I'm talking of people who are like healthcare assistants, maids, people like that who looked after elderly. They had the opportunity to go to the government facilities and test themselves and get themselves tested. They had that opportunity. But now, within the past 4 months, they were told they couldn't get tested because the resources were not there. So we have this massive amount of young people who are asymptomatic, who definitely cannot afford the amount, who are going on the streets and potential vectors of infection. That is the first thing, the affordability. The second thing is denial. I don't want to know whether I have COVID or not. I don't want to be labeled as somebody who has COVID. There's shame to COVID or what, lots of people have all sorts of thoughts about COVID. And so there's that too. Like I said, this is personal, Dr. Jamiu will also, he will identify with this. There are lots of people who even have the ability to get, they can afford it, and they know where to go. They know they can go to the private centers, but they don't want to, because if they are told they have COVID, then they have to isolate, then they have to stop going to work, then they have to do all sorts of things. And that is how we are sometimes in this nation. I mean, we all know stories of people who knew they had COVID and they still went to parties. So it's really multifactorial. But I think, again, I'm saying it's got to be behavior. We've got to adapt behavior, modify behavior, but produce a conducive environment whereby people can do what you really want them to.
Dr. Jamiu, it seems that's speaking to some other issue here. It's perhaps speaking to leadership by example. If people that are in the society that have the respect of the people who look up to them, who they mentor, and they do not, go for these tests, and or even they do not abide by some of these protocols that is being talked about, perhaps that also diminishes the message of taking on the NPIs. So how do we handle that end?
You've said it all. It has to be leadership by example. We've seen many cases where our leaders organize parties without, complying with the protocols, parties, birthday, even during the political rallies and so on. So that has actually created that disillusion that these people are just, COVID is not really in the country. And that has also changed people's mind to make sure that they don't even bother about going for testing and so on. So these are some of the things that has actually complicated the reason why people don't want to go for testing. And especially when you see your ministers, governors, so not complying, you now feel that, why are you being taken as a guinea pig for the COVID-19 issues and so on. So these are some of the issues that actually our leaders need to look into. They need to actually show leadership by example. I want to add to the Saudi issue. You see, these people have been in a very unpleasant environment for almost 3 months in Saudi Arabia, based on reports. Because of that, they've been so frustrated that their major, hope is to get back to their respective homes. You are not telling them to stay in that camp for 14 days, and it's only after they have been tested and confirmed to be negative that they will now go to their virus home. I want to believe those are some of the reasons why you see them trying to refuse being tested and so on. So those are some of the issues. I think, for instance, again, I remember when they were talking about starting the vaccination in January this year, of which it has been shifted to February. I remember many governors volunteered to kind of say they will make it public. I think it's not only just the vaccine. If the governors too can also practice the non-pharmaceutical measures publicly so that people can see it, the parties, and so I think it will go a long way in changing people's mind in regards to COVID-19 and the testing. Thank you.
Abraham, the regulation states that enforcement is by the police, the NSCDC, FRSC, FAN, Nigerian Immigration Services, and all relevant government agencies. We were speaking at the beginning of this program about those supposed to enforce this regulation, who themselves don't even comply.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is, I think, what we were saying is leadership by example. Most people do not even understand. These guys that you're asking to enforce this law do not understand what they're enforcing. They're not trained, medically to understand that this is a biological war almost in which we are that is killing people. They are just trained to enforce, traffic enforcement, this and stuff like that. So I believe training is absolutely going to be critical in what we're talking about. We do need to train our officials. We need to train the police. Again, this is all resources, isn't it? We need to make sure that they're trained and they have the proper WHO training. I do know that WHO have trained, millions upon millions of people online. So they can even connect with the online, channels. Their offices can get them to connect with those channels and get trained. It is a real thing, and I do feel there's this place for the police and all people like that to enforce this. But that is not the primary role of a policeman. It's not the primary role of people like that. And they cannot, in a sense, leave their jobs and go and enforce COVID. So once again, what we're trying to say is that the government alone is not enough. The government has to hold the hands of the private, there must be public-private enterprise, there must be the community, there must be other stakeholders. Everybody must come together to enforce and share knowledge and make sure that all these guidelines are being followed. There must be critical understanding of the problem. You must know that this thing kills. You must know that it is real. And those are the things that we do have to share with the enforcers. We need to share it with the enforcers and make sure they fully understand. I'll just give you a quick example. On a packet of cigarettes anywhere in the world, you see pictures of people who are dying of cancer. You see horrible pictures. That is a way of modifying behavior. Do you show people horrible pictures? Do they know the seriousness of what they're dealing with? Or they just think that it is not real? There must be a way. We must also come together with the medical people and, of course, with permission of the patients. Make sure that people exactly know what is going on. And based on all this type of information sharing, we could get a higher level of empathy.
Yeah, Dr. Abraham, you said earlier that not everyone is motivated by fear. So what difference would those images make?
Thank you. That is an excellent question. Not everybody is motivated by fear of the government. But most human beings are motivated by fear of death.
Yeah.
Or fear of critical illness. If they know, permit me to be a little graphic. If they know that people choke to death when they have COVID, it is practically like drowning in your own secretions. If they know this and they see it, it is massive. It's a massive disincentive not to comply. It's a massive incentive to comply. So they may not, be motivated by fear of the government because, there are many ways of getting out of jail. You know that. But there are not many ways of getting out of COVID. COVID disease, terminal COVID disease. And so I believe that one cap does not fit all. We have to all come to the table and really, talk about this and make sure that there's actionable steps we take so that this virus will start to decrease in our country. Thank you.
Abby Abraham, the long and short of this all is that there are certain non-pharmaceutical protocols which we must follow to stay alive, because this matter is a matter of life and death. And
absolutely,
it's our lives we're protecting, not somebody else's. So we should wash our hands, social distance, use sanitizer, wear a mask. All the things that we've been told to do, we should do to protect our own lives. Thank you very much, Doctors Abby Abraham and Ganiu Jamiu, both public health physicians. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.